Hey everybody, welcome to Rockin' the Valley's Cyber Speakeasy. My name is Mike, I am not for Coltrane. Thank you so much for joining us today for your source for music, conversation, and cocktails. So I hope you have something tall and refreshing to drink with you right now. And today's password is humidity, because the attic stairwell in my house is the warmest, most uncomfortable place in my entire house. But that is okay, because we have wonderful people who are here with us today who are going to be sharing this time with us. We've got the one and only Dave Fry and the one and only... Wait, let me unmute you so that both of you can... There we are. We've got Dave Fry up there on the top part next to me. We've got Ramin Shagat... No, I'm Shayagan. Ramin Shayagan. Yeah, we got it. Here spending this evening with us. Cheers to both of you. Thanks so much for making time.
Thanks for having us.
So let's talk about what everybody's drinking. Dave, I know you've got something there.
I got some Mexican coffee.
Mexican coffee. And is that from a particular... from Mexico, yes. But how
It's
did
from
it
Mexico.
come from Mexico to your coffee cup?
By U.S. mail. And
Very nice.
it just likes me coffee.
I can understand that. That makes sense.
But I have it in my Mexican cup.
Is the cup also from Mexico? Or is
Yes, most definitely.
Nice.
That's the best part of it too.
So that's from when you were in Mexico then?
No, actually, a friend of mine, Cindy Dinsmore, shipped it back in. I do have some stuff from when I was in Mexico, but they got devils on them. So.
It could be that kind of show. We'll find out. Ramin, what do you have?
I have a concoction that I just concocted. It's also Mexican in theme here, so Dave and I are on some kind of wavelength. But this is tequila and lime-flavored seltzer. So
Nice.
it's like like a really lazy kind of fizzy margarita.
Well, I can I'll put tequila in my coffee and we'll meet halfway.
See? There you go. Cheers.
There you go. Cheers. And I have a, let's see, so we've got it's a lime, most of a lemon, a little bit of simple syrup, and seltzer, and yeah, it's not bad. It's cold and refreshing, which is exactly what we need right now. So if the folks who are watching along at home also have something cool and refreshing to drink, please raise a glass with us. Here's to all of you who are hanging out with us on the Cyber Speakeasy. Cheers. Oh, we have so many wonderful things to talk about, and we can talk all night long. I bet about Mark guitar and about fun things that people are finding ways to keep ourselves musically engaged. But I'm going to put it back on me just for a moment, if people can still hear me, and I'm going to do a song. And I'm also going to fix my face, because right now it looks like I'm really, really blue, and I'm going to fix that just a little bit because I neglected to do that before we got started. So I'm going to change it so that it does. There, that's a little better. Thank you for sticking with me while I worked that out. The song I'm going to do today is one that I have not played in probably a couple of months, and I ran out of time to rehearse. So we're going to see how this goes. The song is called Waiting. It was a song that sort of leapt into my head earlier, saying, hey, this is one that's maybe appropriate for this moment of where we are and trying to figure out how we move forward. It's one that my buddy Jonathan and I wrote quite a few years ago. It's on my first EP, so if you're searching for Not for Coltrane on the Spotify and the various things like that, you can find it. The song is called Waiting. by the window to see you come. tell you are not alone. By your hands I can feel everything that isn't shown. I'm the ancient, near complacent maverick monk in marshes lost. You're the angel at the table, laughing over what's been lost. I retract and fade in reaction every time you turn your head. You unburden my uncertain and bring it on yourself instead. By your breathing I can tell this is just a dream. By your pulse I can feel dreams are everything they seem. Cursing, overworking, and falling out of time with God. You are laughing, hands clapping, telling me that I am odd. I will never be so clever to kiss your fist of sunlight cells. You are naked, flawed and sacred, wise beyond all spells. And by your tears I can see everything you see. By your feet I can feel this is where you need to be. I've been waiting by the window to see you come back home again. I've been waiting, hesitating to thank you for letting me in.
Well, all right.
Well, all right. Thank you much, Dave Fry. That song is called Waiting, like I said. Thanks to all of you who are watching. And let me fix this here and put this up so that we can see everybody who's there. We've got Dave and we've got Ramin hanging out with us. If you are hanging out with us online as well, please hit that like button, hit that share button, and tell other people to join in and raise a glass with our guests here on Rock in the Valley's Cyber Speakeasy this evening.
Naked and sacred.
I'm sorry?
Naked and sacred.
Yes, you are naked, flawed, and sacred, and wise beyond all spells. One of my favorite things about that song, I often say this when I'm introducing it, is that Jonathan wrote the words for that, and he said, I don't know what it's about. And years later, I said, I think that song is about your son. The cool thing was that he wrote it 5 or 6 years before his son existed.
Oh, wow.
But I think it fits so beautifully in terms of that experience of them together. So, hi, Jonathan. Hi, Langston. If you two are able to see this at any point. That's my thoughts about that particular song. Yeah, very cool. So ordinarily, at this point, we would shift over so I can talk one-on-one with Dave. My suspicion is that Ramin and Dave are going to want to get in on the conversation with each other, which is totally cool too. So what I'll do at the moment is I'll put it over so that it's there we are. So it's Dave and me together. But Ramin, if you want to jump in on this, by all means, shout out, and I'll switch the camera over so that we can see all of us together, and that's how we'll do it. Dave Fry, how are you doing, man?
I'm hot and sweaty.
Yeah, me too. That makes at least two of us.
I put on a clean shirt for this. I hope you appreciate this.
I do. What I was saying is that one of the helpful things about this is I can shower afterwards because no one has any idea if we're sweating profusely during the show what we smell like during the show. So yeah, there you go.
Well, Zoom has a scratch and sniff thing now.
Oh, it does. Okay,
yeah.
Well, that seems like a bad idea, I just got to say.
You know, Dave, there was a prototype for a device called Smell-O-Vision, which was a television that had a built-in oil diffuser for different odors. And, could you imagine you're watching, Saving Private Ryan or something, and it smells like, death or whatever.
Gunpowder. Yeah.
That's not, cordites. That's not what you want, Apocalypse Now. I guess that smell of napalm in the morning would take on a whole other...
It would, absolutely. Anyway.
Thankfully, that doesn't exist on Zoom. So.
Thankfully not. At least, but I'm sure someone is working on that somewhere. So Dave, we were talking a little bit before the show about how you are keeping busy, although a lot of we're starting to see some of the outdoor gigs come back, but I'm sure a lot of the things that you would want to be doing otherwise have sort of changed. A lot of the work you do obviously is in schools, and so that's kind of different. How's your summer shaping up? What are you doing to keep yourself musically engaged?
Well, I've been working on putting my repertoire onto YouTube, and the way I'm doing that is I'll record something and then put it up on Facebook at 4 a.m. And so I've done about 103 days in a row, and I haven't run out of material yet because I've burned through so many bands that I've got a repertoire to spare. But it's a way for me to perform, even though it's for that little white dot right there. But that's okay. I was lucky in that I got to do some theater work where when the lights go on, you don't see the audience. And so I've been able to wean myself from being able to see an audience and try to project into that little white dot.
It is a totally different sort of space. Although I have to say this, when I first got up on the Godfrey Daniels stage, that was very similar to my experience too, because the way the lights are set up, I have no idea what anyone's doing and reacting. So yeah, but tell us about that though. That theater experience, is that something where people actually were blacked out? Just the nature of the way the theater lights work.
You have to project into the void, and it happened once when I finally got to do the main stage of the Philly Folk Festival. And I was a tweener. I got to play in between the acts. So the first time I came up, it was twilight and I could see the audience, but also it started to rain and I saw my whole audience walk away from the stage.
Right, yeah.
And I went, oh, great. So this is it. But then the next time I came up, it was pitch dark and I could not see anything. But it was at that point that I go, oh, I can do that. So you just project as best you can, and let the X-rays go out, and it works.
Yeah,
that's why even if you're feeling down, you got to smile. It works backwards too, so that's important. And that's the great thing about having theater experience.
Sure. Tell me what you mean about how it works backwards in terms of what you're projecting is then what you start to experience.
Well, if you're wearing a smile, if you're feeling blue and you project the blues, it's not good. But you can smile, and it's a biofeedback thing where the smile comes back at you. Gotcha. And you just kind of have to trust in that. And and it works.
That's something I found myself talking about with my kids more than once. Both my kids do in music through school, and there are a lot of times that they just, Dad, I'm just not feeling it. I'm like, you know what? I've seen Dave Fry do this, and I've tried to do it myself in terms of how you, the generic you, how all of us as performers try to sort of adjust our headspace to be where we need to be in that moment for where the audience needs us to be, and how do figuring out how to get there. Yeah. So, yeah, you've gone through, you mentioned a lot of, when you say you burned through a lot of bands, that means that you had these repertoires from, Pavlov Dogs and Steppin' Out and the Shimersville Sheiks, and who am I missing?
Well, there was my high school band called the Ghettos.
Wow. Now this is new. I haven't heard about the Ghettos. Tell us that story.
And well, no,
there's not much story there.
We were not a good band, but we got together. I mean, it was the first time where we played in somebody's garage.
Yeah.
And we got a couple gigs in the basement of the local high school or junior high canteen, and and I have to admit the first song that I learned was. Let's see. Oh, it was the Animals one.
House of the Rising Sun?
House of the Rising Sun. And it had more than 3 chords.
No!
Wow. But we didn't have Google and we didn't have tape decks. And so even to get the words right. Was next to impossible.
Yeah. Well, especially with some songs. It makes me think, I think it was Dave Grohl of, Foo Fighters and Nirvana who was talking about how, there's something that's undeniable about that experience of just getting together with other like-minded, like-hearted people and just making noise, making music, and just trying to find those spaces. And I guess, it fits into the larger point that you and I have talked about a lot in terms of how music fosters that connection between people. So even as you're just trying to figure out how things work between all the you in that garage or you with an audience, whether you can see them or not, how do you make that connection? How do you use music to bring people together like that?
Well, it's trust. And I think I've mentioned to you that Pete Seeger knew that intrinsically, that when you sing together, there are actually chemicals that are released in the brain that promote trust. And so there's a scientific fact that something is released when you sing together. And trust is an amazing thing.
Yeah. And there's a saying that I've heard you use multiple times, I'm going to mangle it, about the song being on people's lips.
Right. Pete said it's not so important to have music on people's lips. It's more important. No.
Yeah.
Let's get it right. Sorry, Pete. It's not so important to have music in people's ears, but it's more important to have it on their lips because it engages their brain at another level. And then when I play with kids, I make sure the music is in their hips too.
Absolutely.
So that they're moving. It's a physical thing as well as an audio. And
I'm sure that helps build that trust too, that when you take that leap of, I'm going to risk getting up and dancing, I'm going to risk singing out loud, that's part of what helps form that trust of, I take a risk and it was fine. People around me did the same thing. We all engage with it together.
As a teaching artist, we also learn that there are multiple intelligences that people learn in different ways. Some people learn by getting up and moving. Some people have math skills where they learn that way. And, there's a whole list of ways that the human brain takes in and absorbs information. And so you have to be aware of all those things when you perform.
Yeah. And it's when you're performing and when you're trying to engage with people as a teaching artist too. That makes a lot of sense. So out of all these, we're going to say roughly 103 songs, what were some of the surprises along the way of like, oh, hey, I'd forgotten about this one, or wow, this is a lot harder than I remember. Oh, this is easier than I remember. What have been some of the things that have jumped out?
Well, early on, I wanted to do some really positive songs because this was back in middle of March when things were pretty bleak. And so I really went out and tried to find some positive songs, and that was fun. I'm finally getting around to the drunken stuff now, so it was inevitable. No, but they're just, I don't try to find things. They just kind of pop up. And I go, oh yeah, I used to do that one. And what's nice is that the DNA of these songs is there, and I actually can pick them up and get them into performance shape really, really fast.
Nice.
Although I do struggle in front of the camera.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so it goes.
Well,
Those are my. Go ahead.
I was gonna say if you have a guitar handy and you'd be willing to play something for us now, whatever.
A guitar handy?
Just maybe.
I am surrounded by a forest of martins. It's a good thing.
That's a good place to be.
Yes, it is. That's right. I knew Ramin was going to jump in on that.
I'm going to jump into my mahogany here. It's a marvelous one. And here's one. The first time, actually, this is called July. And not having any gigs, this is the first time I've had a chance to play it during July. So.
Oh, that's excellent.
Well, there's good luck coming, like 2 dimes. If I had my way, it'd be July all the time. All of them bugs just singing and a shout. I love they making such a racket, I'd like to drown me out. July, looking like a long lost friend. Last February, thought I'd never see you again. July, looking like a long lost friend. Last February, thought I'd never see you again. Out across the field on a late afternoon, there's music in my head, some old fiddle tune. Mandolin and bass, fiddle and guitar. Oh, it sounds so pretty when you really know how. And it makes me laugh, and it makes me cry. Make me wanna go dancing under those pin-cushioned skies. July, looking like a long-lost friend. Last February, thought I'd never see you again. July, looking like a long-lost friend. Last February, thought I'd never see you again. Something in the air, so sweet and fine. Smells so sweet, honeysuckle on a vine. Down a dirt road, in a firefly spark, I hear a little laughing, a little kissing in the dark. It's a little old man, old woman too. Both gone to bed early, woo, see what July can do. July, looking like a long-lost friend. Last February, thought I'd never see you again. July, lost friend. Last February, thought I'd never see you again. Just good luck coming, like two new dimes. If I had my way, it'd be July all the time.
Very, very nice. I'm so glad that this was the opportunity for you to play that again.
Yeah, it's about time. I usually get it out in February when I need it the most.
Absolutely. Very, very cool.
It's like Here Comes the Sun kind of.
Exactly, yeah.
The verse that always gets me is the one about the little old couple. It's like, yes, absolutely. That is the kind of energy we want right now. All right, so let me, I'm going to put it on Dave again for just a moment, because that's going to let me switch this over to show Ramin in that space. There we are.
Whoa.
Hey,
that's me.
Hey, wow, that's you.
Bigger in life.
And we can have all three of us too, but it also gives us the option of being able to do that. Woo, fancy technology. How are you doing, Ramin?
I'm doing very well. I just learned an important technological lesson, which is that I tried to go on Facebook on my phone to look at the broadcast and maybe share some stuff about it.
Sure.
And apparently my home internet is not up to the task of both having the Zoom call going on and looking at anything else. So this is good.
This works.
You have my undivided bandwidth, so to speak.
So what we're saying is that since Ramin is not able to go share this around himself, everyone who's watching, please hit that share button so more people can get to hang out with us here.
It's so nice to be able to hear Dave play, even in spite of the fact that he's not playing out. It's a pleasure for all of us musicians, I'm sure. So.
Absolutely. And Ramin, the other thing I'm going to ask you to do so it works better when I'm putting both of us on screen at the same time, can you move a little bit toward the center of your camera's field of vision?
How's that?
Yes, that's perfect, because now we can see your whole wonderful smiling face when I put it up like this, so we can see both of us. Very cool. Thank you much, sir. All right. So like I mentioned earlier, I mentioned Martin Guitar earlier, and I know this is one of the things that you suggested that we have a few minutes to talk about. Well, and what do you do at Martin Guitar, by the way? Let me say that. Let's start with that.
So my job title is International Instrument Design Manager. So that's a bit of a mouthful, but what that means in real terms is I get to collaborate with many different areas of the company, whether it's sales department, marketing, engineering, and come up with ways to make basically the best guitars that we can. In my particular field of passion is to make the best affordable guitars that we make. So, I like to say to give
You're talking my language, by the way. I appreciate it.
Well, it's true. I think that we at Martin, we have a reputation for making really expensive guitars, and we do. We certainly do that, but it is our goal as well that if you're looking for an instrument in the lower price categories, let's say up to $1,000, that wherever you are at a music store, if you reach for one of our instruments, that will be in any price category will be a contender for being a really great best-in-class instrument. And so my job basically is to develop and build prototypes of new models. To help figure out how our tooling needs to come together. And thankfully, we have a lot of really brilliant folks throughout the organization to help make all that happen. Because it's one thing to build one guitar or 10 guitars by hand, and then it's another thing entirely if you want to be able to replicate that and build 1,000 of them, or 10,000 of them.
Yeah, I was going to say many thousands of them. Yeah,
optimistic, right? So if you start out with, this may be like technical jargon for some people, but if you start out with Adirondack spruce and Brazilian rosewood and Honduras mahogany as the starting ingredients, and there's no price limit to what you're building, it's very easy to build a phenomenal instrument. Those ingredients are a recipe for success. It's much more difficult to start with non-traditional materials,
right.
Woods that are sustainably sourced, that are not under any kind of ecological pressures, materials like stratified birch, high pressure laminates, things like that, that are sustainable. In some cases, resin impregnated paper products and things like that, to do make certain parts out of them. And it's a lot more challenging to make an instrument out of those non-traditional materials, not only that's going to sound really good, because we've got that down, but that is going to be widely accepted by guitar players who have been used to having this messaging hammered at them that they need, Brazilian rosewood and Adirondack spruce and all this stuff. So our ecological footprint is something that we take pretty seriously, and I think we're doing a really good job. That being said, my guitar at home that I'm playing on a day-to-day basis is a Herringbone V28, which I love. It's not as lightweight as Dave's. Dave's is a real, what we call a thunder boomer. That's a technical term. You can take that anywhere and don't know what you're talking about.
It's a killer.
Yeah, I particularly like that one. And it's funny, that model name is called the Streetmaster. Originally, we were going to call it the Busker, but my colleague Skip, we weren't sure that everybody out there would know what a busker is necessarily. To us, that sounds ridiculous. Everybody knows what a busker is. Well, so Skip came up with this idea to call it the Streetmaster. And I remember at first, I may have laughed. I thought, no, that is ridiculous, and I was totally wrong.
It sounds like a Transformer.
It's a great name, it really is, and people love them. So the general rule of thumb is the less paint you got on it, the better it's going to sound, and that definitely applies to that guitar. So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that also makes sense as that's something that you can do. That's a way of managing the price point. Right, because
Absolutely.
if we're just going to make sure there's no paint on it. Well, that's something we can do. That's
right. To spray, for example, if you imagine how overhead gets calculated in any kind of manufacturing, if you're spraying multiple coats of lacquer and then sanding between and spraying more and buffing it to a high gloss mirror polish, that takes a lot more time than it does to spray one or two really, really thin coats and leave it in its natural sort of satin look without trying to polish it up to a high gloss. There's something for everybody, I'd say, in our... I don't want to sound like a product shill for my employers, but
you believe in what you do. I mean, that makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love it. So coming from the violin world previously, guitars are a lot more fun for me.
So I'm curious about that, since you brought that up. How does one go from what got you into the violin world in the first place, and then how do you get from there to Martin guitar?
Well, I started with guitars. I started out, I was a kid. I was like 14 or 15 years old when I built my first guitar at home, and the impetus for that was that I had this Squier Stratocaster from a kit, or from a sort of a pack that came with a guitar, an amplifier, a cable, a set of strings, and a couple of picks. And I think it was $149 or something like that. And and that's a really good place to start if you're a kid. And your parents, they don't want to shell out a ton of money on a hobby that they're not sure you'll stick with. I think this is a dilemma that many parents go through when their kid wants to start something new. Do you go all out and buy the super expensive soccer cleats, or that they're going to outgrow in 6 months, or do you maybe take it a little more cautiously? So anyway, that guitar, I wish I could say that I learned how to play it to the limit of its capabilities and needed a new one, but really I just didn't like it, and I took it apart. and realized upon reassembly that there were a lot of things that I didn't understand and I wanted to learn. So from there, I was a goner. It was a matter of months before I bought a kit, and my father and I tried to put it together, and then from there it became a journey of discovery through trade school program in Germany, Michigan, working with professional luthiers, eventually going to a different guitar company in California after college, and finally moving back to Pennsylvania to apprentice at a violin shop. I was not a great violin maker, but I was using the space to continue building guitars for the most part. And I think that there's a big difference. It's very difficult to make good violins. Even more difficult than, I would say, making an average flat top guitar. But the marketplace is such that there's really not a ton of room for creativity. And I say that with no disrespect to the violin world, but
there's kind of an established sound of, we know how this plays and this is exactly what we want. We want you to dial in this all of the characteristics of the sound and the playability and everything. We know what that should be.
Right. Now, this is not necessarily true of bluegrass music or traditional music. Sure. However, in the orchestral world, which is where the vast majority of kids are, learning to play the violin. Right. If it's not a copy of a Strad or an Amati or a Guarnerius or a similar, or maybe some of the German makers, then it's wrong. And when you're in an orchestra, obviously it's a team effort, and if you've got 20 violins or violins, violas, and cellos, you can't have someone there with a lime green violin, because they'll stand out, and it detracts from the whole experience of the ensemble. And so to that end, I much prefer getting to work on new and exciting guitar projects, because guitarists are rugged individualists. Even when they're in a band, they're intolerable, to their bandmates in many cases. And so to me, it's a lot more fun. And I find that even in a traditional company like Martin, that the guitar world in general is a lot more open and tolerant of novelty and new ideas and progress, as opposed to the world of classical instruments.
Yeah. So. Well, I also just to back up, I think it's fascinating that, for a lot of kids, they start with the instrument. Oh, hey, this is cool. I'd love to be able to play this. And then, and then eventually maybe you start to learn some pieces about how some of it gets put together. But that from you, right from the start, it was both. It was the playing and the how do the innards of this work? How does it all fit together?
Absolutely. And, I feel really lucky in that I'm probably one of the last kids around that grew up just before, digital music distribution. Mm-hmm. And so while we had a CD player in the house, when I was a kid, we had tape decks in the car, and I had my uncle's old portable record player, his old turntable, and the entire discography of Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Genesis, some Hendrix, all kinds of great, at Renaissance, I think that was my mother's. But all these records that were sort of bequeathed to me from my aunts and uncles, and that was my musical, sort of formative musical experience. Yeah. And honestly, I still enjoy all of that music so much. The Crosby, Stills, and Nashes, and all the classic rock of the world. So I guess chasing those sounds makes you realize that unless you're Keith Richards, in which case. He has said that you can give him any guitar and any amplifier and 5 minutes, and he will make them all sound exactly the same, which is quite a statement. And yes, I don't doubt it. I don't, but I will say that I have found that you may need multiple guitars for different applications. If you look at Dave there in his guitar sanctuary, He's got a virtual forest, an arsenal, a guitarsenal, one might say, of appropriate tools for different jobs. And so for me, this is an excuse to continue assembling a ridiculous number of instruments with impunity. I can justify it to myself.
That makes sense. I mean, I'm sure I bet a big part of it is that you, even if you aren't able to take all of them home, that you get to get your hands on some just absolutely exquisite instruments.
Yes. And I will say one thing that is really wonderful about working at Martin is, even though the instruments are remarkably consistent, from one to the next, which is, I think, part of the reason why people like the brand so much.
Sure.
The D18 sounds like a D18. Every so often, I wouldn't say we have ones that sound bad, but every so often there's one that sounds particularly, exceptionally good. And so part of the thing that really interests me is finding out what is it about those specific instruments that the formula, if all the ingredients in the recipe are the same,
okay, yeah,
and if the recipe is being followed the same way to
time
build it, what is that extra factor that causes an instrument to sound better than others, for example? And so this is something which is sort of an intersection of science and R&D and magic, and I really love that.
Yeah, and artistry, absolutely, yeah. Well, and I should say this too, is that in addition to being a luthier, someone who makes guitars and stringed instruments, you are a killer guitar player. And I would, if you would be willing to play something for us right now, I'd love to see what we can do. We had a little challenges with sound check, and maybe we'll do some of the stuff you've been messing around with and posting after work for the past couple of days. But if you have something that's right under your fingers right now that you're eager to play, I would love to hear it.
Sure. So what I found, by the way, is if I muted myself when Dave was performing and when you were performing, that it helped sound better. So I don't know if that will work for you guys in my case, but I have a record that I just finished recording last year and still have not released, but I'm really looking forward to doing so in the near future. It is a collection of miserable songs that are, some of them very catchy, and I'm really excited to put it out into the world. So that is called Foreign Land. You can find some of it on YouTube, and this is the title track from the record, Foreign Land.
Excellent. Let's hear it.
Okay. I guess I'm not a cautious man. Come on, strong, I understand, it's what I do. When my heart began to heat, I wrung it out and let it bleed all over you. And I would have turned it off, maybe I did not know how. Stopping it ain't even slowing down. Every street we crossed, I put my life into your hand. Walking with a stranger in some foreign land. Walking with a stranger in some foreign land. And who predicts their own defeat? Even when I'm clearly beat, I gotta play. How I hate to feel exposed. It's from experience, I suppose, that I'm this way. And I would have turned it off, maybe I did not know how. Stopping it ain't even slowing down. Somewhere along the line, I put my heart into your hand. Walking with a stranger in some foreign land. Walking with a stranger in some foreign land. you ever want my touch? Or did I question you too much to let you try? Well, I didn't listen quite enough. But I heard the sadness that your anger did belie. And every street we crossed, I put my life into your hand. Walking with a stranger in some foreign land. Now anytime I hear a sigh, I put my ear down the track. But you ain't stopping, you're not even looking back. You ain't stopping, you're not even looking back. Are you even looking back?
Very, very nice.
Is that coming
Very
through the
nice.
microphone okay?
It's, you know, the audio software, the teleconference software we're using is not kind to guitars in general, and so, but if people can actually, so you can still get an essence of where it's going, and I'm eager for people to also hear it. You said that you have a version of that that's out on the YouTube that people can check out?
Yes, so I have a ridiculously great band of musicians that participated in recording this album, and so we recorded
working with Todd,
live. Todd Scheid engineered the whole thing. He was great. I don't know, anyone out there, if you ever want to make a record, talk to Todd Scheid, especially if you're the kind of person like myself who really does not want to have to spend any time picking up the phone or chasing people down or coordinating availability for dates and things. Todd managed all of that. I pretty much just said, hey, Todd, you know, I'd like to make a record. Here's some musicians I'd like to work with. And he said, okay, you know, here are practice times. Here's how we're going to set it up. And here are the dates that we need to book for the studio. So you can find that on YouTube. This is going to sound ridiculous saying it out loud. I believe the channel is called Ramin Music Official, which sounds really officially super official. Good. Yeah, whatever. It's hard. It's when you see something like that, you go, oh my God, who takes himself like seriously like this? But
we'll make sure we get some of that. We'll make sure that gets linked up in the description of this, so folks who are watching on the replay can head right to that.
And that song is called Foreign Land, and you will know it because there's a picture of me sitting in front of a food truck in Austin, Texas.
There you go. Very nice. Very cool. Thank you so much, Ramin.
No, my pleasure.
You know, I'm going to put it back on all three of us. Yes, absolutely. I'm going to put it back on all three of us. And because I was hoping that Dave could tell the story of his involvement with Martin Guitar. I've heard the story a couple times. My guess is that Ramin has heard this. But in terms of, well, Dave, I'll let you tell it. In terms of why Martin said, hey, we could use your help, Dave.
There have been so many different ways that they've helped me out. I get strings from them. You know, and they fix my guitar. I walk in with my guitar, and the guys in the repair department they go, "What'd you do now, Dave?"
We've got a file on you.
I know. I play them. I beat them up. You know.
But when they found out that a lot of folks working at the shop there didn't all know how to play guitar.
Oh, that one. Yeah. I taught guitar up at Martin once. You know, I think the industrial engineers figured out that some of the people in the repair department and in the string department, et cetera, didn't know how to play guitar. So they invited me up every Monday to sit in the boardroom, and they brought out kind of wounded instruments for the people to play. Yeah, really. There were holes in them and everything, you know. And so we learned how to play, you know, the G chord and the C chord, and then the wait for it.
Is that how they got holes in them, Dave?
Yeah, right. I think they played ping pong with them in the back there, you know. And then the old F chord.
That's a tough one for people to figure out.
But anyway, it was great, and so I had some friends from Connecticut come down. I lived in Connecticut for a while, and they came down to take the tour. So we were walking through the workspace there, and I knew a bunch of the guys working at the benches there. And one of them, Virgil, came up and said, "Hey, Dave, how are you? Good to see you." And all my friends from Connecticut went, "Whoa." Whoa. Yeah, so it was good. But you know what's cool is this one. This was the first one I got from Martin. You can see the age marks right there. That's my sweat. That's my sweat.
You know, it's funny, Dave. People pay extra these days for guitars that look like that.
Well, you know, I've offered to age guitars for people. You know, I can do it.
And break them in.
6 weeks, man. Yeah, I can do it. But this one I got, and my friend Dick Boak said, "Well, we can get this one for you, you know, for a discount, but you can't play it first." And I said, "Well, I trust you guys." And so they got this one for me, and it's a great guitar. And I got to play for C.F. Martin, the older gentleman. This is back during the 80s at a Lions Club. And I was scared. I mean, I'm playing for the man, you know. Yeah. And he came up afterwards. He was very gracious, and he said, "Thanks." And I said, "I really appreciate you getting this guitar for me. It's a wonderful guitar." And he goes, "I helped pick that one out for you." And it went, whoosh.
That's pretty cool.
Oh, and Ramin, you got to watch out. There's a crack in it from when the cat I was living with knocked it over.
Ah, yes.
And I saw it go in, just like in the movies, in slow motion. So mind your cat.
Well, while I am qualified,
who's your friend there, Ramin?
Well, yeah. So that is Mr. Shim, and while I am qualified to fix things, I would prefer not to have Shim destroy guitars. So I've had this cat since December. I've known him for a couple of years. He was living under my friend's porch on her farm for a while, and she moved, and she said, "Look, I'm moving. I can't take him with me. Will you take him?" And I said, "Oh, absolutely," because he's a great cat. He's just extremely friendly and vocal. He is 22 pounds, which is very large.
It's not a cat.
Yeah, he's more to love, so to speak. But he's a great friend, and I'll tell you, I live alone, but during this quarantine period, it has been extremely nice to have Shim around as a companion and a friend. And he loves hanging out. He's not one of these cats that just hides and doesn't want to interact with people. He wants to be wherever the action is. So when you can't have your friends over for 3 months, and you can't go to work, and you're trying to stay home, having another living creature in the house with you, to me, has been a really valuable friend. Yeah.
Well, you know what? Actually, that reminds me of something else I was going to ask you: is how things been working at Martin with COVID going on? And I'm sure there were, where are things now? How's it been going over the past couple of months?
So that is a great question. So we kind of at Martin, we have teams of folks in our sort of senior leadership who are constantly making contingency plans. And I know that for a period of weeks, at least before the shutdown became a reality, this was something that was very much on the minds of folks in senior leadership, which is like, is this something that's going to happen or not? So even though, when the shutdown order finally came, that it was still a surprise for most of us to think, oh man, this is real.
Yeah. Well, and two, it's not like you can just take your guitar workbench home with you necessarily, I would think, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of things that needed to be thought through. For example, we have a lot of shared tools. Just for some context, we have 550 people working in the factory. So we have shared tools. We have workspaces where people are passing materials or instruments between each other, and so there are hands that are constantly in play, and you can't very well sanitize, bare wood before it gets a finish applied to it, because then you might have finish problems. So,
Yes.
all of which to say, there are so many factors to consider, and I think shutting down was one thing. Starting back up has been challenging, but has really been phased in super well. So where we're at right now is the factory is open. We've been open for a month, maybe a little more. We're building guitars. We're selling guitars. We're trying to build them as good as ever and replenish our warehouse, which has been picked clean.
I would imagine
because we were able to do some shipping, but during the shutdown, that was it. So folks that can work from home or working from home, and folks like myself and all the production guys who are hands-on, we're in the factory. We wear masks. We maintain our distance. It's a little weird in some ways because we have a very familial atmosphere at Martin, and people generally like their coworkers and socialize with them. And so to have that aspect of the workplace be gone, and our cafeteria, for example, is sort of shuttered for the time being. It's a big adjustment, and it's hard. But I would say, I think we're doing a really good job. And I think we're going to emerge from this making really good guitars as usual, and with a sort of a newfound appreciation for each other and our willingness to make sacrifices in order to keep everybody healthy.
Right, because it's not any good for Martin if the whole production team gets sick, because then you can't make guitars then either.
Right. So we have pretty comprehensive measures in place to keep everybody healthy. I get my temperature checked every morning, and I've learned some things. Every day is a school day. It turns out that even though 98.6 is the nominal average human body temperature, it turns out that is not true. That most people run up to a full degree below that, and some people, like me, run at 97.3. So, things to learn. That makes me cool.
So you're saying you run a little hot? That's what you're saying?
I'm saying I run cool.
Oh, you run cold. Okay.
Yeah, 97.3.
Because you're a cool guy. That's what that means.
So I don't know, some kind of song fraud. But it's really cool. I feel very safe going into work, and I know my coworkers. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I'd say we do too. In fact, I have on my desk right now a very cool CF Martin branded mask,
nice.
Which is awesome. It's super cool. It's very comfortable. And funny enough, people have been asking us if they can buy them. You go out to the store,
that makes sense.
Oh my God, a Martin mask. They're not for sale, but maybe they will be someday. I don't know.
That seems like a likely possibility.
Yeah,
Very cool. Thank you so much, Ramin. Thank you so much, Dave. I really appreciate you both making time to hang out with us here tonight.
Oh, Dave, it's so great to see you, and both Daves. And Michael, thank you so much for, because I have two Daves. I have a big one and a small one. Sorry, nobody else would get that. And Michael, thank you so much. Cheers.
Absolutely. Cheers to you. And cheers to everyone who's been hanging out with us. Thank you so much. I'm going to put the camera back on.
Good to see you, bright friend.
I'm going to put it back on me for just a moment here so I can clear the space, because coming up momentarily, we have Rock in the Valley's own piano pub with other fun people happening. That's starting in a matter of seconds, really, so please stick around for that. And then stop back here next Thursday for Rock in the Valley's Cyber Speakeasy. Right here with me, my name's Mike. I'm not for Coltrane. This is your source every week for music, conversation, and cocktails. Cheers to all of you who have been hanging out with us. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for being here, and that's what I was looking for. Thank you very much for hanging out with us, spending an hour of your evening with us. Hope that you get a refill on your drink and then stick around for the piano pub. My name's Mike. I'm not for Coltrane. Please take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. I'll see you next time.